So, how prepared is Canada for this fire season? Blair Feltmate is the head of the Intact Centre on Climate Adaptation at the University of Waterloo, and he joins me now. Hello, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Blair, as we just heard, Parks Canada says the monster fire that ripped through Jasper has consumed roughly 32,000 hectares and destroyed 1/3 of the town's structures. What goes through your mind when you see that sort of thing happening?
Well, obviously, it's sad to hear that news, but at the same time, Jasper merits credit for preparation at the town level for wildfire. For about 25 years, if not longer, they've been conducting. They've built fire breaks around the community to be an area where they remove organic matter, and then hopefully, when the fire comes up to that, it holds it back. They've been engaging controlled or prescribed burns for almost 25 years to make it such that the fuel base from which fires feed off of is limited to a greater extent than otherwise would be the case. They've got sprinkler systems installed in critical areas to help minimize the damage to critical infrastructure. So there's some good news there to be realized that the damage could have been much worse had they not made that preparation. Where there could be a little bit more effort, and not just for Jasper, but for communities across Canada in forested and grassland regions, is preparation at the level of the individual homes. Actions people can take around their homes to limit the probability that the fire will burn their home when it comes through a region.
Well, it's certainly worth pointing out that in these sorts of circumstances, private property owners are responsible for rebuilding their own property if it is damaged in a fire like this. But I want to ask you about the government. We heard an update earlier today from Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault alongside Parks Canada. Climate scientists have been warning that this is going to be the new normal going forward. And if this is the new normal, what role should the federal government play in response?
Well, there's 2 points. One is this actually isn't going to be the new normal, because climate change is irreversible, period. Climate change is here to stay. And although we will make efforts, and we are making efforts properly so, to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, the most we can do is slow down climate change. We can't stop it. So as challenging as things are right now in the country with wildfires, with flooding, with extreme heat events, all of these events are going to get more extreme going forward. So there will be no new normal. There will be evolving risk or challenge in the system due to extreme weather. Now, having said that, what can the federal government do? At the very top of the list, probably driven through Environment Climate Change Canada, guidance should be given to homeowners as to actions they can take around the outside of their property and physically with the house itself, to lower the probability that when the fires come through a region, the house burns down. And by the way, similarly for flood risk, actions that can be taken at the level of the home to lower the probabilities that someone will end up with a flooded basement during major rain events. But the government should be leading efforts to put this simple information into the hands of homeowners to help them better prepare for these events, which are not going to go away.
Is there anything else that the government can do? I mean, today, Guilbeault fended off some questions, for example, about what Parks Canada did or didn't do to protect the area around the national park. He said the cooperation between all levels of government and officials has been phenomenal, but the Jasper fire defied typical firefighting conventions. It was volatile, it was unpredictable, he said. What do you make of his explanation about this?
No, in my view, in Canada, we're actually pretty good at addressing events like wildfire, flood, extreme heat after the bomb's gone off. Like, once it's been deployed, we're pretty good at executing on plans to help protect people and property after the event. Where we need to put our efforts is up front to make it such that in anticipation of these events, we've put the measures in place, let's say around a house, to, as I mentioned earlier, to lower the probability that that house will burn down when the fire comes through such simple actions as, by the way, removing shrubbery in close proximity to the house that might otherwise ignite, and the heat, when it burns, the heat transfers to the house and the house burns down. Don't store firewood at your back door. Replace wooden fences with chain link fences. Wooden fences, they catch fire, the fire follows the fence up to the house and the house burns down. We should make sure that the roofs on houses that in the forested regions, that they are Class A fire resistant roofing, such that if embers land on the roof, the probability of the roof igniting and the house burning down is much lower. And my point being that Steve Guilbeault, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, he could be a conduit to bring that information to homeowners who live in forested and wildfire regions to give them the guidance on what they need to do to protect their homes. And that's not happening nearly to the extent it should be happening.
Well, on the flip side, one could argue that municipalities and emergency response fall under the provincial jurisdiction, and that the provinces across the country should be taking a bigger role in preparing homeowners for this. What would you say on that front?
No, I agree 100%. And Canada has something that it was a program that released a year ago at the federal level called the National Adaptation Strategy. And in that strategy, there are 26 targets that look at how we can mitigate flood, wildfire, and extreme heat risk in the country. Now, although that was released by the federal government, they did a very good job in emphasizing that this is an all hands on deck commitment to help us reach those targets in the country. And that means it's effort by the federal government, provincial government, municipal governments, the business sector, and down to and including individual homeowners. Everybody has a role to play in mitigating risks that's on our doorstep now and in recognition of the bigger risks to come. So you are quite correct. This should be an all hands on deck commitment.
And I've heard you suggest that governments still aren't doing enough to respond to this crisis level situation. What does enough look like when we're facing this sort of circumstance?
There could be a reallocation of funding in the country to direct more money to preparedness or in the field to adapt to these extreme weather events that we've been talking about. Right now, since about 2015 to the present, the federal government of Canada, for every $20 it spends on efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it has spent $1 on adaptation, adapting to the extreme weather risk that's on the ground today and the greater risk that's coming. So we've got a 20-to-1 ratio of funding directed towards mitigation versus adaptation, which is way, way, way lopsided, way out of whack. It should be much closer to about a 50-50 allocation of monies to address, yes, mitigating greenhouse gas emissions to slow down the rate of change or driven by climate change, the rate of impacts driven by climate change, but also more effort directed towards helping us to prepare for these extreme weather events. Right now, there's almost no funding available.
All right, we have to leave it there. Blair Feltmate is the head of the Intact Center of Climate Adaptation at the University of Waterloo. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.